I love this country. I was born and raised here. It doesn't belong to the Bush family or the Clinton family or any of these others. This is part of God's earth. And I think it is my and our responsibility to do as much as we can to defend our land and to force it, if necessary, to live up to the better part of itself. May God bless us before this conference is ended to renew that type of commitment. The last thing I want to say is this. Our sister, Afia Siddiqui, she needs our collective support. What has been said about her, the official story of Afia Siddiqui is just as ridiculous as the official account of 9/11. And right now she needs our support. If she doesn't get it, and I think Lynn, my sister Lynn, she knows this. If she doesn't get that support soon, and she's not released soon, she's going to die soon on that military base in Texas. She needs an independent medical team to be allowed in to examine her, first to determine that she is still alive, because she has been so cut off that her family has not even been able to visit her in almost a year. Thank you.
Sharmin Siddiqui is here. There she is, okay. Is our next speaker, and she's director of the Prisoners and Families Committee of the National Coalition to Protect Civil Freedom, where she supports and organized families of Muslim political prisoners targeted in the domestic war on terror. As a prison abolitionist activist, prisoner rights advocate, organizer, and artist, she incorporates visual art in her academic and organizing work. Sharmin Siddiqui.
Stand here. Yeah, this is good. Zurata Duka's voice cracked in tears as she recounted the invasion of her peaceful home by federal agents in 2007. She was washing dishes on a quiet evening when the door to her home in New Jersey exploded as if it had been bombed. 10 or more massive men in SWAT suits stormed in, pointing rifles and guns at her. Terrified, she lifted up a chair to protect herself from the intruders and screamed at the federal agents, "Don't touch me. I'm Muslim. Please let me put my headscarf on." But the agents threw her onto her kitchen floor, slammed her to the ground, and pushed her face down. They handcuffed her hands behind her back and forced her to stay in that position. Then they ransacked her home for over 5 hours, looking for guns and weapons. They found none. Zurata and her husband and their 3 little sons, Draitan, Shane, and LJ Duka, was entrapped, along with their 2 friends, were entrapped by an FBI informant in South New Jersey. And I start with this to basically grab your attention to me. The investigation was led by Governor Chris Christie, who was then leading the U.S. Attorney's Office. I feel really humbled and privileged to be part of this panel. The political prisoners included in this panel is where I learned my work to do the work that I do with the National Coalition to Protect Civil Freedoms around the Muslim prisoner and Muslim political prisoner. So this wasn't my speech, but I'm going to read my speech now. So I'm here as a sister of a political prisoner, my brother Shiva Siddiqui. I'm also here as someone who works closely with families of post-9/11 Muslim political prisoners whose loved ones have been profiled, targeted, entrapped, incarcerated by the neoliberal military prison, and I'm going to borrow from Raymond Govern, corporate security intelligence, and add Islamophobia's white supremacist industrial complex of a declining empire in fear of losing its glory. And it wants to persist by instilling paranoia, and using Muslims as a new scapegoat, under the guise of protecting national security in the war of manipulating human emotions as the rhetoric war on terror, but it's actually a war of terrorism on all our communities. As we can see in the context of Zurata. About my brother was born and raised in the US. He is fluent in Arabic, actually in Quranic, the ancient Arabic, and was translating political, religious literature, which some may find distasteful because they're political in nature, from Arabic to English, and publishing them in an online publication, Tigan Publications. If you know of Tariq Mahanna's case, he was also translated for the same publication. And he was connecting with youth. Tariq Mahanna and my brother, they knew each other from this publication. And they're basically exchanging ideas and talking about the wars abroad and their frustrations about what a Muslim need to be doing in this context. My brother was working with my sister, who's a political activist in Atlanta, Georgia, in a women's rights organization that focused on ending violence against women. He volunteered with organizations such as Women's Actions for New Directions, as many of us know, is a national organization whose mission is to empower women to act politically, reduce militarism and violence around the world. He spoke out against the US violence in Iraq and Afghanistan, helped organize anti-war protests in Atlanta, Georgia with my sister and with the progressive community there. He was a community leader. He used to give Bible sermons in Atlanta and also in Bangladesh. So he was a community leader, preacher, and a teacher in the making. He was an inspirational speaker. If anybody comes across, talks to him, and they always, he's very motivational. So that was threatening to the US government. He went to a Muslim school in Canada for a short while and then went to Bangladesh in 2005. He also lived in Bangladesh for a while. Returned here, then went back to get married. And 12 days after he was married, in April of 2006, the US government had him kidnapped off the street when he and his wife was returning home after a post-wedding shopping. And they made him disappear for a couple of days. He was blindfolded, punched, kicked, and then we have renditioned him in a secret CIA aircraft. So Shiva is one of the first young Muslim men to represent himself at his own trial in the federal court system, and we need to understand this act as a political statement when prisoners do that. He had 4 charges, but he was sentenced to 17 years. 4 charges that had 60 years, and he was sentenced to 17 years, and is currently located in Communications Management Unit. In the context of the war on terror, the myth of national security that is used as justification to target Muslims and all of our communities has affected all our communities. And as families targeted, we already know the state has chosen our innocent loved ones as the scapegoat, and they bear the brunt of the state's most egregious imperialistic counterterrorism measures. The state has targeted our community leaders, teachers, and preachers, or those who appear to possess those characteristics. In other contexts, the state has also targeted the most vulnerable members of our community. Members of our community. This targeting of Muslims at home, as we know, is connected to the broader expansion of the imperial carceral state and its neoliberal capitalist political agendas abroad, trying to control Muslims and other communities of color to rule over the world. This impacts our collective safety and freedom, and when our collective safety and freedom is taken away and attacked, that's a form of violence in all our communities. Despite these measures, the families feel isolated and alienated within the larger American communities, society, and within their own Muslim community. However, we remain resilient in the face of this state violence. We will not stop fighting for our loved ones. They have committed no crime, certainly no act of violence. They're all political prisoners. We will continue to expose the rights violations in federal courts and prisons and the state violence that we have been made to endure. My presence here represents the resistance to this violence of this imperial state. So we must unite, organize, and expose this inherent imperial violence in all our struggles and movements. and make sure that political prisoners should be included as the center and front of all our struggles, and demand the release of all our political prisoners. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is the oldest of my friends in this room. We graduated Jamaica High School together in 1958. And when Lynn Stewart comes up here, we're going to sing you the school song. Lynn is a brilliant attorney. No matter what the government says, when they took away her license to practice, she defended more political prisoners than you could ever imagine. And when the former Attorney General of the United States asked her to defend the blind Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, she took the assignment. And she had to fight for her very life. When I first met her in California, she got in the front seat of my car, and this very handsome young man got in the back seat, and she pointed to him and said, "Jeff, I'd like to introduce you to Ralph Pointer, my husband." And I said, "The Ralph Pointer?" And Ralph said, "What do you mean, the Ralph Pointer?" And I said, "The Ralph Pointer who led the struggle of the black community against the racist Shanker school strike in '68? He said, "That's me." And I was side by side with Lynn on standing up against the racist strike. Now Lynn has a stupid side. I want to tell you about it. She's sitting there as a defendant in her own behalf.